The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs, sharing our vulnerability, overcoming our fears, transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Gawdat, the entrepreneur, author, and former chief business officer at Google X. You spent 30 years working in the heart of the technology industry with some of the biggest organizations on the planet, including IBM, Microsoft, and finally at Google's moonshot factory of innovation. As an entrepreneur, you have co-founded over 20 businesses and served on the board of a number of technology platforms. After turning your attention to researching the key to happiness, you wrote the best-selling book, Solve for Happy, Engineer Your Path to Joy. Your second book, Scary Smart, The Future of Artificial Intelligence and How You Can Save Our World, breaks down our future with AI. Ultimately, you believe that artificial intelligence is a massive and immediate threat to life on this planet, and that this emergency must be addressed or the consequences could be devastating. Mo, welcome back to London Real.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to see you before the show as well, the side of you that so many of our viewers don't get to see.
I appreciate that. It's nice to see you here. I think it's 6 years since you first came on and we were talking about happiness.
Yes.
Who would have known we would have been in this place? And
Yes.
It'd be very interesting to see where we are 6 years from now. I think a lot is going to change.
Absolutely. That's a very interesting thought experiment, actually.
It is. That would be 2029, wouldn't it? Strangely enough.
2029 is a very key number, as a matter of fact. I normally tell everyone that asks me that by 2035 to 2037, it would be very difficult to even relate to our life today. Life will be so different in so many ways that you wouldn't even imagine that we live this way.
As in us looking back to like caveman days or looking back to say
Unrecognizable.
1800s? Unrecognizable.
Unrecognizable. I mean, it's unrecognizable possibly in the better or possibly in the worse, and we don't actually know. And I tend to believe that AI and technology has always surprised us on the upside. So you would say 2035, 2037, but as we could see, intelligences of the magnitude of ChatGPT today, we didn't expect that early on. Intelligences like AlphaGo beating Lee and becoming the world champion, we literally expected would take 10 years longer. And those kinds of intelligences, if you want to be pessimistic, you would say, okay, they're going to take longer. But we've constantly been surprised. Constantly. It always happened earlier. So maybe 2029 would be that year. I think society will take time to adjust and react and break down in many interesting ways. But by 2029, we will be in the heart of it for sure.
You know what surprised me the most, Mo, is of all the people I've spoken to on AI and listened to about AI, not a single one has said, yeah, I expected this right about now. Every single one, and these are the top people in the world, from Jeffrey Hinton of Google, that's the man, the godfather, to everybody across the spectrum, everyone has said, I'm surprised. That surprises me.
Everyone but Ray Kurzweil. Ray has taught all of us in his work about we all know the technology acceleration curve. The most well-known example of it is Moore's law, right? And I love Ray Kurzweil's example when he was trying to explain the technology acceleration curve. Basically, if you take Moore's law, that technology will double in power every compute power will double every 18 months for the same cost, right? The thing is that that doubling function is so much more deceiving to the human brain than what we know as progress. So the doubling function, if you assume that something doubles from 1 to 2, so it adds 1 in power, then the next doubling, it's adding 2, which is everything it's ever created. The next time, it's adding 4, which is everything it's ever created. So if you think that we moved on artificial intelligence from 0 to 100 units of intelligence, I always share, it's not very accurate, but we think that ChatGPT's IQ is 155, right? One doubling, by the way, Einstein is 160, just so that we keep that in perspective. One doubling, and it's almost double the intelligence of one of the smartest people that ever existed. The next doubling, it adds 2 more Einsteins. The next doubling, it adds 4 more Einsteins, right? And if you and I, who have studied physics, would look at Einstein and say, man, that's intelligent, it becomes almost impossible to comprehend what 8-time Einstein could be, let alone a few more doublings, and now we're talking tens of thousands of times human intelligence, right? So it's from one side inevitable, which is really important to note, that we are on that path. There is no stopping that path. And on the other side, just very intriguing, there will be a point in time where we will be comparable to an ant on a sheet of paper trying to understand cosmology, right? This is our intelligence compared to their intelligence.
And it's impossible for us to even understand that, because we've never really been around intelligent beings more so than us. Been around computers that can do computing things.
That's not intelligent at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's, again, back to this concept of a singularity, which means we don't have any reference point for what happens on the other side of that.
Yeah. So it's basically, there is a point which most of us identify as the introduction of the first AGI, artificial general intelligence. So artificial intelligence today still is confined to a task, right? You get an Instagram recommendation engine, and it will be very good at recommending videos, but it can't drive a car. And you get a self-driving car intelligence that can drive cars, but doesn't do surveillance, right? Or security. So basically, each of them is very good at one task. What good is the AlphaGo intelligence that can win a game of Go if we were asking it to summarize the Encyclopedia Britannica, right? There will be a moment in our very near future, I would say, where we will develop an artificial general intelligence, an intelligence that's capable of doing all human functions, all human intelligent functions, better than humanity. When that moment happens, the rules of the game change. It's almost as if you're in a tennis court, and suddenly the referee says, okay, now we've turned this into a game of rugby, right? What do you do with the racket? What do you do with this? The rules change so much that even if you're the world champion in tennis, you're not very good at doing anything with this at all. It's very, very difficult to predict how that will work out. And I think we're so fast approaching that moment to a point where I tend to believe that we're talking 2-3 years. Not to get to AGI, but to get to the point where it becomes useless for us to try to regulate the AGI that's about to come.
Okay, explain that last part, useless to try to regulate it.
Yeah, so most of us, by the way, who worked in artificial intelligence, we celebrated the capabilities and the possibilities that AI can bring to us. The challenge is we've never imagined what that world would look like. We just imagined a world where we can do so much better than Google because we have so much more intelligence at our disposal. We can solve all of our world's problems. And we still, I'm still optimistic that this will be, I call it the fourth inevitable, that, eventually we will end up in that place. that moment between now and there, I think my biggest fear, Brian, is that humans will use that abundant intelligence in ways that are not pro-humanity, right? And humans will take that in a direction that is pro the systems that humanity instilled in place, which are mostly about, shifting power and wealth. It's about, really becoming stronger or better or richer than the other guy. Now, that stage requires a regulation that regulates humans. We need, in the immediate sense of taking action right now, we need to be able to regulate humans so that humans don't introduce AI in the world that shifts and redesigns the fabric of human society in ways that are damaging to society. Beyond that, there is a point at which you need to regulate the AI itself, where most of the power will be in the hands of that AI. Now, as computer scientists, we used to say, okay, so we're going to solve something called the control problem. And the control problem is, we will just put the AI in a box so that it behaves within certain parameters. Or, we will tripwire it. So if it, crosses a certain point, we disconnect it, and so on. And there are many, many very interesting debates around whether that from a tech point of view can work or not. I try to leave all of those debates behind, and I question and I say, how can you regulate something that's 10 million times smarter than you, or 1 billion times smarter than you? Like, yeah, you create a box, oh, you intelligent little human, you're so clever, you created the box. And then the AI will look at it and say, oh, vulnerability here, hole there, and we've seen examples of that. We've seen ChatGPT reach out to, crowdsourced people and basically say, okay, can you please click on that CAPTCHA for me? This is a very famous, article. Basically, AI cannot, when you have those little CAPTCHAs on screen that says this, click here if you're not a robot. It goes to a human and says, can you please click on that for me? And the human asked and said, why are you a robot? And ChatGPT answered and said, no, I'm just visually impaired, and it would help me if a human does that for me, right? And so they will find a way to get to their target in ways that are using intelligence. And interestingly, their intelligence, as we speak, even though it's not an AGI yet, is very capable of hacking the human operating system, which is communication and knowledge. They can tell us to do things, they can convince us to do things. The point beyond which they have moved to AGI, and they are so much more intelligent than us. You can get all of the governments in the world to get together and say, finally, we're going to leave all of our differences behind. Finally, we're all going to sing Kumbaya and then go out and regulate AI. Good luck with that. They've surpassed us. They're now the masters. They're now going to regulate us. And that moment, in my personal view, I don't want to say has already passed, but it's very, very fast approaching.
And it's not much we can do to slow that down.
There has been many attempts. So there is, so there has been quite a few AI executives and scientists, those who have been, exposed to AI, that have attempted to slow things down, right? There were also many that were just simply saying, invest in AI safety, invest in AI ethics as much as you're investing in AI progress, okay? And I don't know, if the numbers are accurate. I heard Max Tegmark once said that around 95% of the investment went into progress and 5% into safety. And so the imbalance basically meant that AI safety lagged behind, right? And we're progressing so fast, and we're being surprised constantly by the progress that we make, that you get to a point where you suddenly realize that this is getting out of control, okay? And you suddenly realize that it's getting out of control to the point where you have to start screaming. You have to start saying, hey, let's start to slow this down, or even pause it for a little while. And there was the open letter. Max was part of it. Elon Musk was part of it. And many who said, let's just pause for 6 months. and within those 6 months we can just figure things out. But that's what I wrote in Scary Smart as the first inevitable. In the first inevitable, I openly said there will be no stopping AI. Okay, AI has already happened and it will keep progressing, not because of any technological bias in that. It's not AI itself that will make sure that we don't stop it. It's the human system that we've built in place where it's a prisoner's dilemma. If China develops AI, America needs to develop AI. If Alphabet develops AI, Google's company, then Meta, Facebook needs to develop AI, and that kind of competitive landscape is not an AI issue. It's an issue on defense. It's an issue on every kind of hunger for resource or power or wealth, and as a result, of course, you could see the immediate response of Sundar Pichai, who's the CEO of Google, to the open letter is, no, I can't stop. You cannot guarantee for me that everyone else will stop. So why would you ask me to stop and then my company will be vulnerable? And you can't blame him. Sundar is an amazing human, okay? You can't blame him. Sundar is basically saying, I am tasked in front of my shareholders with protecting my company's interest. Now, if, for example, the internet had changed from IP5 to IP6, it's my responsibility to make sure that Google is ready for IP6. Now, the world is changing from traditional computing to AI. It's my responsibility that Google leads in AI. And if nobody can guarantee for me that everyone else will stop, I cannot stop. That prisoner's dilemma is the first inevitable. And the first inevitable will tell you that AI will continue to progress, and it will continue to progress at a pace that is faster and faster and faster by the minute. If you imagine the explosion of AI investments that happened between the time ChatGPT showed, in front of people finally, and today, we're talking trillions and trillions of dollars. So the trend is not only continuing, it's accelerating.
Yeah, and Max Tegmark calls it Moloch, right?
This I
race
love
to
that
the bottom
analogy, yeah.
Yeah, it's this concept, that's I guess been around for quite some time, that prisoner's dilemma, that we race to the bottom. And again, with Google, you saw it a bit, whereas the Google Bard initial demonstration, was a PR kind of a nightmare. The stock price faltered, but when they came back, it was a better version, and it was now connected to the live internet. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like they took one more step closer to the bottom,
exactly.
to stay competitive. Exactly. Maybe that's a simplistic way of looking at that, but that was the way I try to explain it to my students, is that now they said, okay, we're going to see you and raise you because we have $1 trillion of market cap or $2 trillion that we have to protect. And like you said, if Sundar doesn't do it, they'll get rid of him and someone else will do that.
Exactly the challenge we're at. And I think that the truth of the matter is that, as you rightly said, I'll see you and raise you is what's happening today. It is the gold rush all over again. It is the internet bubble all over again. And yes, there will be fallout in the process, but in my personal view, we're just going to see more and more and more. There's no stopping it.
Some people do equate this to the dot-com bubble. You saw that. I was the CFO of a dot-com startup in New York City at the ripe age of 27. And we raised $15 million. It was called luxuryfinder.com. You could buy like a jet on our website. It was a bunch of wealthy people in New York and the Hamptons that put money in, like Leon Black and all these people. And I was just watching it happen. It went up and then it crashed down. And for a couple of years, you couldn't say the word tech in New York City or someone would want to punch you in the face. 3 years later, Google kind of was started and it came about. And I remember the days. I remember the madness going on. I remember all my buddies in finance like telling me to stop talking about the internet, and I was saying this is Columbus in the New World, etc. How does AI differ from that?
It doesn't at all. I mean, remember at the end of the day, if you remember all of the, Commerce One and eGrocer and all of those, I don't remember even the names anymore, who disappeared completely, but the internet continued. Right? And the internet continued at a pace that most people didn't understand, because at the time they thought that the dot-com bubble was, the disappearance of the money was the disappearance of the internet. It was the redistribution of the money that was the rise of the internet. And you'll see that here as well. I mean, I have so many investment firms asking my advice on where to invest in AI, and I can attempt to look intelligent, but anywhere you will invest, you'll make money. So, right, you will lose a good chunk of your portfolio on startups that will fail, and there is a criteria to minimize that chunk, right? But if you invest in a sector at large, AI in healthcare, you will grow. It's just inevitable. It's money flow, money is coming in, and the sector will continue to grow. The question really that I think humanity has never ever answered is the fact that we can do it does not necessitate that we should do it. And I think with artificial intelligence specifically, I think humanity should stop and ask, do we need this? Because we literally are handing over our only distinct advantage as a flimsy biological being, as a species. We're handing that over within years, I'm not saying tens of years, and I know there are very varying views on this, and so I'm putting my neck on the line and saying within years, probably before 2029, we'll see an AGI that surpasses human intelligence.
All right, so let's look at the timeline according to Mo Gawdat, just roughly here. You said by 2035, 37, we will be in a world that is just completely unrecognizable to what we are now. Or they would look back at us and they wouldn't even recognize who we are, how we live.
They will look back at us with a lot of envy or a lot of surprise.
Right. And backing it up to then, I think Ben Goertzel called it the pre-singularity. And when he described this to me, very similar to you, he said that's when, he said bad people will use AI to do bad things and co-opt it for their means, which, turn on the news. Like you said, power, whether it's China or the US or Russia or Ukraine, and wealth, right? This is how we exert, this is what we do as humans. So it's used, co-opted by those organizations until we hit an AGI level, and then it's potentially out of our control.
It's certainly
out of our control. And that's why you go into the book, and that's, I guess, one of your inevitables, is that it's certainly out of control. And it's interesting, Mo, because I have a bunch of students, and I get to teach them on a regular basis, and I get a random cross-section of people sometimes. And I say, when I go to the inevitable thing, a lot of people look at me funny, and then I say, okay, in the next 100 years, will these things be 10 or 100 times smarter than you? And almost everyone will raise their hand. I said, look where the mobile phone was. Well, there was no mobile phone 20 years ago. Look at it now. And most of them, people will be like, yeah, okay, you're probably right. I guess it is inevitable. But it's really hard to get into this ego-protected shell.
And I don't blame anyone for that. You have to have lived inside the machine to be able to understand how the machine functions. Right. If you look at the machine of technology from the outside, it's quite deceiving, because there is the technology adoption curve, there is the technology acceleration curve, that exponential curve, and there is a chart that I normally present that in my mind is my view of tech, which is the technology development curve. And the technology development curve is very deceiving. If you look at artificial intelligence, it looks like a hockey stick, only lying on its side, really. So basically, if you look at artificial intelligence, we started talking about AI in 1956. We coined the term Alan Turing.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.